Ghostbusters is directed by Ivan Reitman, and it's most notably starring Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, who was a former parapsychologist who had to quit his job because he stopped receiving funding from a college, and he had to move on to start a business with two other parapsychologists where he would capture ghosts and keep them locked up in a storage facility. I think between the 80s and the early 90s was the height of Bill Murray's acting career, and this film is a great example of that. His performance here is excellent. He is so hilarious in this film, and he's definitely the best acting performance here. I also think Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson delivered great performances in this film that were hilarious and were central to the comedic tone of this film, especially Ernie Hudson towards the final act. Some of the comedy he delivered was perfect, and I think it was right what the film needed to be. The comedy across the board here and the acting in general was really good. I think they had a great casting director behind this, and overall some great results out of it. I also really respect and appreciate the visual aspects of this film, during the ghost scenes in particular, because they didn't have computer generated imagery back then. They had to animate each ghost scene frame by frame, which would take 3 weeks just to animate 1 second of a ghost scene in full detail, frame by frame. Like, there's clearly a lot of hard work put into it. And even if it doesn't look good by today's standards, you still have to acknowledge that they put in so much hard work into it, and they managed to create such iconic and memorable visuals out of it, which I really respect and appreciate. I also love the use of cinematography, the lighting, and the camera work, and even some of the fog too. I think it all adds up really well together, and clearly a great cinematographer behind it, Laszlo Kovacs. They were on a very high budget for this film, $30 million. That's very high, even for the mid-80s. And they clearly had some great production value here. I love the filming locations they used. It all worked really well, and the car that they were able to use for it. I was really impressed by what they were able to pull off visually, and their musical score is one of the most iconic musical scores in pop culture history, particularly the theme song itself. It's become so ingrained in American society, and in general, the musical score is so iconic, and it fits perfectly with the tone of this film as a comedy, but in general, just such an iconic film. This is also a pretty well-paced film, too, overall. I think it's so well-paced because it really manages to keep you engaged with comedy that's not only really well written, but is delivered by such great actors, but it also manages to keep you engaged with interesting characters, too. I think the main thing that took me out of this film, though, was particularly the love triangle, the romance they tried to bring in. It felt out of place, and it brought in a lot of scenes that just got so bizarre and ridiculous to a point where it's like, why is it in there? You question why they would think it's a good idea to put that in the film. I do have a nitpick with this film, though, and it's that there was a scene where they're running out of a building where they're really intimidated by a ghost, like running out of the building completely panicked and everything, but then after they start having a conversation with someone, they start talking completely normally, like nothing happened. It just felt so unrealistic and out of place. But if you can put that one nitpick aside, this is a great comedy, and one that I'm very fond of. I'm giving Ghostbusters, an A-. But as always, I hope you enjoyed this review. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next video.